was never real. I can give up, but what was never real. I sacrifice illusions, nothing more. And as illusions go, I find the gifts illusions try to hide, awaiting me in shining welcome, and in readiness to give God's ancient messages to me. His memory abides in every gift I receive of Him, and every dream serves only to conceal the self which is God's only Son, the likeness of Himself, the Holy One who still abides in Him. The likeness of Himself, the Holy One who still abides in Him forever, as He still abides in me. I can give up, but what was never real. I can give up, but what was never real. Father, to you all sacrifice remains forever inconceivable, and so I cannot sacrifice except in dreams. As you created me, I can give up nothing you gave me. What you did not give has no reality. What loss can I anticipate except the loss of fear, as He still abides in me? What loss can I anticipate except the loss of fear, and the return of love into my mind, and the return of love into my mind. I can give up, but what was never real. I can give up, but what was never real. Well, hello. Thank you all so much for joining me here today on the banks of this little creek that feeds the Lake Spiro that I've been recording on the last couple days. I came upstream just to kind of see what fed it. And I don't know the name of this little creek. We'll just call it the feeder creek of Lake Spiro, the old Lake Spiro in Spiro, Oklahoma. I'm Miracle Willie, or Forgiveness Willie, forgiveness teacher from the Ozarks. And here we are on Sunday, November the 17th of 2024, lesson 322 in A Course in Miracles, workbook for students. We're reading from the Foundation for Inner Peace version today. I can give up, but what was never real. Wow, if you give something up, you know, I've always said, let go and let God. Just give it up. If whatever it is, give it up. Because if it's still there after you give it up, it was yours already and you can't lose it. But if you give something up and it wasn't yours, it was an ego illusion, an idol, you're good to let it go. Can't go wrong when you give things up, because God's made sure that things you give up are only the illusions, because everything else you can't give up. I mean, you can step back and let God lead the way, which is just another way of saying I can give up, but what was never real. I sacrifice illusions, nothing more. And as illusions go, I find the gifts illusions tried to hide, awaiting and shining welcome, and in readiness to give God's ancient messages to me. His memory abides in every gift that I receive of him, and every dream serves only to conceal the self, which is God's only Son, the likeness of himself, the Holy One who still abides in him forever, as he still abides in me. Father, to you all sacrifice remains forever inconceivable, and so I cannot sacrifice except in dreams. As you created me, I can give up nothing you gave me. What you did not give me has no reality. What loss can I anticipate except the loss of fear and the return of love into my mind? When you let fear go, what you always had becomes obvious again. What the fears were hiding is the love that is your reality. Okay, let's go take a look at our associated reading for this lesson. What is creation? Creation is the sum of all God's thoughts, in number infinite, and everywhere without all limits. Only love creates, and only like itself. There was no time when all that it created was not there, nor will there be a time when anything that it created suffers any loss. Forever and forever are God's thoughts exactly as they were and as they are, unchanged through time and after time is done. God's thoughts are given all the power that their own Creator has, for He would add to love by its extension. Thus His Son shares in creation, and must therefore share in power to create. What God has willed to be forever one will still be one when time is over, and will not be changed throughout the course of time, remaining as it was before the thought of time began. Creation is the opposite of all illusions. Creation is the opposite of all illusions, for creation is the truth. Creation is the Holy Son of God, for in creation is His will complete in every aspect, making every part container of the whole. Its oneness is forever guaranteed inviolate, forever held within His holy will, beyond all possibility of harm, of separation, imperfection, and of any spot upon its sinlessness. We are creation, we the sons of God. We seem to be discreet, and I looked up that word. I want to give you the definition. Discreet, careful, and circumspect in one's speech or actions, especially in order to avoid causing offense or to gain an advantage. I found that in the Oxford Languages Dictionary. So careful in one's speech in order to avoid offense. Okay, so let's see. We seem to be discreet. We're kind of watching our words, so that we don't offend anyone or make ourselves look diminished. We seem to be discreet and unaware of our eternal unity with Him, with God, as a Son of God. Yet back of all our doubts, past all our fears, there still is certainty, for love remains with all its thoughts, its sureness being theirs. God's memory is in our holy minds, which know their oneness and their unity with their Creator. Let our function be only to let this memory return, only to let God's will be done on earth, only to be restored to sanity, and to be but as God created us. Let's read that sentence again. There's a lot there. God's memory is in our holy minds, which know their oneness and their unity with their Creator. Let our function be only to let this memory return, only to let God's will be done on earth, only to be restored to sanity, and to be but as God created us. He tells us what we ought to spend our day doing every day. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, Jesus told us 2,000 years ago, and is telling us again today. Our Father calls to us. We hear His voice, and we forgive creation in the name of its Creator, holiness itself, whose holiness His own creation shares, whose holiness is still a part of us. That's why I can give up only what is not real. I can give up but what was never real. Our lesson for today. Be sure to do your longer practice period in the morning, your meditation where you sit in the silence, bathed in this idea, I can give up but what was never real. And then try to just let all the thoughts and the words be still and just see what God has for you with that open mind and peaceful breath. And then throughout the day, keep that alive as you are at the top of each hour if possible, but each hour try to remind yourself, I can give up but what was never real. Find something to give God thanks for during that hour too, and ask for guidance. Be sure that you're at peace and that you're fulfilling your function. Let our function be only to let this memory, God's memory, return only to let God's will be done on earth, only to be restored to sanity, and to be but as God created us. Okay, let's go look in the manual for teachers for today. Yesterday we read, Is Reincarnation So? And he starts off, and the next section is 25, Are psychic powers desirable? And he starts off by saying the answer to this question is much like the preceding one. So let's see what he means by that. Because remember, there can't be, a body's not real, so you can't really have more than one body. You can't have any bodies, but you can believe you have, and you can manifest that, and it can become a path, a method of observation, observing yourself being born and coming again and again. So, but in any real sense, that can't be true. He's saying psychic powers are the same way. The answer to this question is much like the preceding one. There are, of course, no unnatural powers, and it is obviously merely an appeal to magic to make up a power that does not exist. It is equally obvious, however, that each individual has many abilities of which he is unaware. As his awareness increases, he may well develop abilities that seem quite startling to him. Yet nothing he can do can compare even in the slightest with the glorious surprise of remembering who he is. Let all his learning and all his efforts be directed toward this one great final surprise, and he will not be content to be delayed by the little ones that may come to him on the way. Isn't that something? Paragraph 2. And I listened to, tell you what, let me just, before we go to paragraph 2, let me tell you about on IANDS, IANDS. It's the International Association for Near-Death Studies. There was a Joseph Banks, I'll put the link to his talk. It was 28 minutes and 35 seconds long. Airplane fuel tank near-death experience. He was cleaning out a fuel tank inside the tank and ended up having quite an experience, and it awakened him to a lot of his powers that he didn't know he had. And so that's why I wanted to kind of encourage you with that. And he talks about remembering past lives, and quite a fun story, though. Paragraph 2. Anyway, that's Joseph Banks' story. Paragraph 2. Certainly there are many psychic powers that are clearly in line with this course. Communication is not limited to the small range of channels the world recognizes. If it were, there would be little point in trying to teach salvation. It would be impossible to do so. The limits the world places on communication are the chief barriers to direct experience of the Holy Spirit, whose presence is always there and whose voice is available but for the hearing. These limits are placed out of fear, for without them, the walls that surround all the separate places of the world would fall at the holy sound of his voice. Who transcends these limits in any way is merely becoming more natural. He's doing nothing special, and there is no magic in his accomplishments. Paragraph 3. The seemingly new abilities that may be gathered on the way can be very helpful. Given to the Holy Spirit and used under His direction, they are valuable teaching aids. To this, the question of how they arise is irrelevant. The only important consideration is how they are used. Taking them as ends in themselves, no matter how this is done, will delay progress. Nor does their value lie in proving anything. Achievements from the past, unusual attunements with the unseen, or special favors from God. God gives no special favors, and no one has any powers that are not available to everyone. Only by tricks of magic are special powers demonstrated. Paragraph 4. Nothing that is genuine is used to deceive. The Holy Spirit is incapable of deception, and He can use only genuine abilities. What is used for magic is useless. What is used for magic is useless to Him, but what He uses cannot be used for magic. There is, however, a particular appeal in unusual abilities that can be curiously tempting. Here are strengths which the Holy Spirit wants and needs. Yet the ego sees in these same strengths an opportunity to glorify itself. Strengths turned to weakness are tragedy indeed. Yet what is not given to the Holy Spirit must be given to weakness. For what is withheld from love is given to fear, and will be fearful in consequence. Paragraph 5. So as you start developing these powers, that's why we want to take those quiet times so God can teach us. But as you begin to awaken to these powers that some of you might awaken to in near-death experiences or in other mystical revelations that you might have, don't use them for the ego. The ego might want to use them for glorifying itself, but just know that they're available for everyone and that you're to use them as the Holy Spirit sees fit. Paragraph 5. Even those who no longer value the material things of the world may still be deceived by psychic powers. As investment has been withdrawn from the world's material gifts, the ego has been seriously threatened. It may still be strong enough to rally under the new temptation to win back strength by guile. Many have not seen through the ego's defenses here, although they are not particularly subtle. Yet given a remaining wish to be deceived, deception is made easy. Now the in quotes power is no longer a genuine ability and cannot be used dependably. It is almost inevitable that unless the individual changes his mind about its purpose, he will bolster the power's uncertainties with increasing deception. And the last paragraph, 6. Any ability that anyone develops has potentiality for good. To this there is no exception. And the more unusual and unexpected the power, the greater its potential usefulness. Salvation has need of all abilities, for what the world would destroy, the Holy Spirit would restore. Psychic, and the word psychic's been in quotes several times here. Psychic abilities have been used to call upon the devil, which merely means to strengthen the ego. Call on the unseen world, maybe some darker spirits you might think of, just less evolved, but they're without a body, and you might think of those as the devil. Well, salvation has need of all abilities, for what the world would destroy, the Holy Spirit would restore. Psychic abilities have been used to call upon the devil, which merely means to strengthen the ego. We want to be ego-less, don't we? Yet here is also a great channel of hope and healing in the Holy Spirit's service, because you're being able to see the unseen world now, maybe. Those who have developed psychic powers have simply let some of the limitations they laid upon their minds be lifted. It can be but further limitations they lay upon themselves if they utilize their increased freedom for greater imprisonment. The Holy Spirit needs these gifts, and those who offer them to Him and Him alone go with Christ's gratitude upon their hearts and His holy sight not far behind. Let's read that last sentence again. The Holy Spirit needs these gifts, and those who offer them to Him and Him alone go with Christ's gratitude upon their hearts, and His holy sight not far behind. Remember how we talked about using gratitude to speed you along the way? Well, be thankful for the psychic powers you do begin to develop. My nephew Caleb's kind of quiet, and he just kind of listens a lot. He said, Uncle Will, it's kind of like a superpower when you're quiet. You learn so much and you see so much. And I told him, I said, well, that's a good gift you got there, Caleb. Okay, I can give up but what was never real. Okay, what all's going on around the world today? It's Doodah Day in Pasadena, California. Electronic Greeting Card Day. Homemade Bread Day. My teacher used to make homemade bread using a bread machine. He said that's the easiest way to do it. Happy Ghost Day, and that's Ghost, Germany, where they have some big celebration. Yeah, they're all happy in that town, I guess. And so let's use our word for in German for peace, and it's Frieden. So Frieden be with you, peace be with you, and Happy Ghost Day. International Students Day, Baklava Day, Black Cat Day, Farm Joke Day, Take a Hike Day, Petroleum Day, Little Mermaid Day, World Day of Remembrance of Road Traffic Victims, and I like to change the word victims to wrecks. World Day of Remembrance of Road Traffic Wrecks. Or there's no victims in the world, is what I'm trying to say. I realized that when my wife died, my first wife died in a car wreck, and left me with 6 children to care for. But you know what? It was a beautiful experience. I learned Romans 8:28. All things work together for good. So how can we call it a tragedy? How was she a victim? We all create our own experiences, and we all need to be appreciative of everything that happens. Some of our greatest lessons are in the ones that we think there's just no way to see this as beautiful. World Prematurity Awareness Day, and did you know 1 out of 10 babies are born preterm? And Unfriend Day, and let's talk about Unfriend Day just a moment. It reminds me in the levels of teaching in the Manual for Teachers number 3. What are the levels of teaching? Well, the second level, where you meet someone and then they seem to go, you might have been in a tense relationship, and then they move on and you don't see them again for a long time. But he says in that, in paragraph 4, sentence 6, yet all who meet will someday meet again, for it is the destiny of all relationships to become holy or to become friends. So an Unfriend Day is just a day to opportunity to remember to be their friend. Even if they want to unfriend you, you can still be their friend. And one last thing to talk about is we're just kind of going through plants out of the Seed Savers Exchange. And I'm liking, this next one is the Byrd mustard. It's a Brassica juncea. This heirloom variety's leaves have the classic spice and sharpness of a good mustard green and are more substantial in texture than other leafy greens. The glossy, highly toothed leaves gently cascade downward, making them an attractive addition to the vegetable garden. Jim Tepkema received the variety from fellow Seed Saver Exchange member Dorothy Jones in 1990 and later donated it to our collection. The variety's lineage can be traced to Georgia in 1839 through Dorothy's husband's ancestors. 18,300 seeds to the ounce. And I thought this was kind of a nice little place here on the edges of on this little creek. Let's see if we can take a little look at it. It just seems like just a nice little quiet creek, a little Spiro Creek, maybe it's called. I don't know. Be sure to do your lessons for the day and your hourly remembrance. I can give up, but what was never real. I can give up, but what was never real. I sacrifice illusions, nothing more. And as illusions go, I find the gifts illusions try to hide, awaiting me in shining welcome, and in readiness to give God's ancient messages to me. His memory abides in every gift I receive of Him, and every dream serves only to conceal the self which God's only Son, the likeness of Himself, the Holy One, still abides in Him. And every dream serves only to conceal the self which is God's only Son, the likeness of Himself, the Holy One, who still abides in Him forever. As He still abides, as He still abides in me. I can give up, but what was never real. I can give up, but what was never real. Father, to you all sacrifice remains forever inconceivable, and so I cannot sacrifice except in dreams. As you created me, I can give up nothing you gave me. What you did not give has no reality. What loss can I anticipate except the loss of fear and the return of love into my mind? I can give up, but what was never real. I can give up, but what was never real. I can give up, but what was never real. Frieden.